Hi everyone, welcome to the session. I'm just going to allow a couple of moments just for everyone to get through the waiting room. So please bear with while everyone comes in. You're going to be automatically muted and your cameras are going to be turned off. So if you do have any questions or comments throughout, please do just pop them in the chat. You can ask anything. This is a pretty relaxed session, so please feel free to ask anything in the chat. How this will work is I'm going to do a short presentation, probably around 15 minutes, which will then give us 15 minutes for sort of any questions that you have. As I say, just please ask anything. That's why we're here today. If it's about a competitive university, if it's about applying to university, more than happy to answer any questions you have. So I'm just going to ask my colleague Carl to just unmute a second and just check you can see my screen okay. Carl, is everything displaying okay?
All looks fine.
Brilliant, thank you. So hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Amy, I'm an outreach officer at the University of Exeter. I'm going to be talking to you today about choosing a competitive university and sort of the application process that is aligned to choosing a competitive university. So the aims and objectives of this session are first of all to understand what a competitive university is, and also to develop an understanding of what the benefits of attending a competitive university are. So I'm not sure what point you're at the moment, but if you have already submitted your UCAS application, then this is still relevant. But if you haven't done that yet, when you're making your choice about what you want to pop on your UCAS form, there is obviously a lot of choice out there, as there are over 300 higher education providers in the UK. When you come to the point of filling in your UCAS application form, or you might have already done that, you're going to be narrowing down your choice to 5 or less choices. There are a huge range of factors that people will consider when they're deciding which university to study at and the course as well. So this could include things like the course or the subject that you want to study, entry requirements for a course, so that could be A-level grades or GCSE requirements, and also subject-specific requirements as well. So if you need, for example, to study medicine, you're likely to need an A grade in biology and chemistry at the University of Exeter and a lot of other institutions as well. You could also take things like league table rankings into account, so maybe not one league table, but a whole range of different league tables that take different things into account. You could be looking at the teaching standards of a university, so how they're rated in the Teaching Excellence Framework, which is a little logo called TEF that you might have seen in university marketing. You could look at student satisfaction, so how happy are the students on a particular course or at a particular university. You could be looking at the cost, so not only cost of living in a particular area, but also things like the tuition fees, and if there's any scholarships and bursaries available to support you at that institution. You could also be looking at location, so not only where the university is located in the UK or a different country, but also whether it's a campus or a city-based university. Other things to take into account are things like the nightlife and the social scene. Are there any hobbies that you're taking up at the moment or any groups you're part of that you want to continue at university? You could check out and see if a society is available, or if there's something you've always wanted to try, is there a society available for that as well? If you play sport, having a look at the sporting facilities might be a really important thing for you, particularly if you compete at a particular level. But also if you play a musical instrument, are the facilities there for you? Is there a society and things like that? So lots of different factors to take into account. And finally, friends and family. So how far away is it for you to visit your friends and family and for them to visit you, and how easy is it transport wise? So a competitive university is one which receives more applications than they have spaces for on their course. That means that the application process does tend to be more selective. There are a lot of characteristics associated with competitive universities which makes them attractive to potential students like yourselves. So competitive institutions tend to be research intensive. What this means is academics are engaging with world-class research while they're teaching you. So for example, academics at the University of Bristol are working on how 5G networks will be introduced across the southwest of England. Academics at the University of Stirling are looking at the effect of heading a football on the human body and how it might lead to illness in the future. Competitive universities also tend to have an excellent learning experience. So as I mentioned, a lot of your teachers or your lecturers will also be conducting research at the same time. And this research will feed into the lectures and the modules that you're taking. So an example of this is at in the Medical Sciences Department at the University of Exeter. We're looking at ways to potentially treat and one day cure diabetes. This research that academics are undertaking is then incorporated into the modules at Exeter and make sure that students are learning the most up-to-date knowledge in the field. As well as this, you can see a bullet point about facilities. So there is an opportunity at competitive institutions to use equipment and resources that academics and researchers are using in their own projects to help with your learning. So an example of this is if you were looking at studying something like biosciences, you could have a look at the lab facilities at institutions like Exeter. And finally, reputation. So competitive universities tend to have reputations for being excellent places to not only study, but also live as a student. You might already be familiar with the Russell Group. If not, the Russell Group is a group of 24 UK universities who are committed to maintaining the very best research, outstanding teaching and learning experiences, and unrivaled links with the business and the public sector. So Russell Group universities are very competitive in terms of applications, and successful universities as well. So 4 of the top 10 universities in the world sit in the Russell Group, 15 are in the top 100, and all 24 of the Russell Group universities are in the top 250 of the QS World University Rankings in 2018. Russell Group universities share a goal of delivering outstanding teaching as well as world-class research. Applying to a Russell Group university is a guarantee of quality in research and teaching. Russell Group universities have all the same qualities, so things like a great reputation, great employability, the chance to develop skills and knowledge that I've previously mentioned when I was talking about research-intensive universities. So on this slide, you can see the names of the 24 Russell Group universities. There might be some names on there that you recognise, there might be some names on there that surprise you. So as you can see, there are some familiar names on there. What I'm going to do on the next slide is I'm going to show you a league table. So this league table comes from the Guardian University 2020. You can see some universities are marked in red and some are in black. The universities in red are current members of the Russell Group. The universities in black are not members of the Russell Group. So you can note from this slide, some universities are incredibly highly ranked and they're not members of the Russell Group. So you can see universities like the University of St Andrews, the University of Bath, who are with us here today, are not members of the Russell Group. So alongside all the factors I spoke about at the start of the presentation, membership of the Russell Group can be a factor for you to take into account when you're choosing a university, but it might not be the only factor you consider. Many competitive universities who are on this list are not members of the Russell Group, but as you can see, they're incredibly highly ranked and they will still have those incredible facilities. So you can have a look at membership of the Russell Group as a factor, but we would really advise kind of having a look at a lot of different things as well when you're making your decision. So what is the application process? For when you're applying to any university, you'll be doing the first 3 things. So submitting your achieved and predicted grades, writing a personal statement that's assessed by a university, and also be having a reference from your school or college. So the first 3 bullet points are required for all universities, but the last 2, interviews and auditions and admissions tests, tend to be more common in competitive universities. It's important to know that every university does have a different application process. So I am currently giving advice based on the University of Exeter's policy, which tends not to conduct many interviews or admissions tests. At Exeter, we do interview for drama and medicine, but these are the 2 kind of notable exceptions. If you are considering university and you have looked into the course and it might not be entirely clear the application process and whether there's an interview involved, would really recommend kind of getting in touch with that department or that university to get some clarity and some specific advice on to their own application process. So if you're not entirely sure if you might be called to interview, do just get in touch with the universities. They're more than happy to answer your questions. And if it's not clear, then just ask. So at the University of Exeter, we tend to focus on entry requirements first, and we also take the personal statement into account. So if you get a chance to listen back to my colleague Sam from Bath's presentation on personal statements, I really would recommend it. But just to give you a little bit of insight here, the personal statement supports the university's decision. For competitive institutions like Exeter, we'd be looking at 70 to 80% of your personal statement to be about the subject or subjects you're applying for. The other 20 to 30%, as I'll make reference to later, can be about your transferable skills and why you'd be an asset to the university. For the University of Exeter, personal statements are rarely decisive overall. So first and foremost, we will be looking at grade requirements. But the personal statement does provide really helpful context when we're deciding whether to make an offer or not. The personal statement for Exeter is reviewed for borderline applications, whether that's prior to making an offer or in the summer around results day. Again, really important, if you are considering university, just have a look at how they view things like the personal statement. It is really important to note as well that if you haven't, or even if you have already submitted your UCAS application, that's potentially going to 5 different universities who could view personal statements in very different ways. So it's really important to, it sounds really obvious, but make the personal statement the best it can be. So do put a lot of time and effort into planning it, getting it proofread, checking it over, making sure everything is as good as it can be, because the personal statement is your opportunity in the application process to kind of speak directly to a university and prove to them why they should make you an offer. So to give you a little bit more insight into the admissions process at a competitive institution, for a competitive institution like Exeter, we are a medium-sized university, and we receive between 36 to 42,000 applications per year, for a planned intake of approximately 5,900 students. So once we make offers to students, they then decide their firm and insurance choices during the UCAS process, and then it's on to results time, which is why we tend to make more offers than places. So at Exeter and at most, if not all, universities in the UK, we will make conditional offers, and the condition is that you meet a certain grade requirement or another requirement in the summer, so around results day. If you receive those grades and they meet the offer, or the offer that the university has given you, then the offer will then shift from conditional to unconditional because you've met the conditions. At the University of Exeter, again, alongside a lot of other universities, we consider applications holistically. So we take into account a huge range of factors, not just grades. So we look at things like non-academic excellence. We look at extenuating circumstances, so anything that might have impacted on your ability to get those grades and meet the conditions of the offer. We look at whether you're from a low participation neighbourhood. We look at if you're leaving care, or if you're a carer yourself, or if you're estranged from your family. And we also look at school type and performance. If you are considering a university and considering a course at a university, do just have a look on their website and see what they take into account and how they assess an application, because this can be part of your research. So when you're looking at universities and courses, do just look at how they look at applications as well. So what are universities looking for? So competitive universities are looking for academic ability. So a key part of this is your grades, so your predicted and attained grades. They'll help a university see whether you're going to academically thrive on a course. Also looking for students who are dedicated and passionate about a course they're applying to. And finally, so I did mention this briefly earlier, transferable skills. So things like time management, project management, research skills, presenting skills. These sort of skills will directly transfer into your university career. This is the 20 to 30% of the personal statement I was talking about. You will have developed these skills. You might not even know you've developed them so far. So lots of different things, whether you take extracurriculars at school, whether you have taken an EPQ, done the Duke of Edinburgh Award. These things do give you loads of transferable skills that are going to be super relevant to you when you progress to university. So universities are looking for those transferable skills that will make you an asset to university life. So what does this mean for you? Russell Group and competitive universities do have a higher number of students who achieve a first or 2-1 degree classification. This is the result of excellent levels of teaching and the support provided to high quality students who attend the universities. Also, student satisfaction. So student satisfaction results are taken yearly and they suggest higher rates of satisfaction at Russell Group and selective universities. I've mentioned you're going to be taught by academics who are delivering world-class research. So around 75% of research grants do go to Russell Group universities. 68% of the UK's top-rated research was conducted at Russell Group universities. So if you want to find out the most up-to-date findings in your subject, these institutions are the places where the most developments are happening. The research grants attract top academics in their field who will then go on to teach you. So it's really motivating, really, really inspiring. Because Russell Group and competitive universities draw a large amount of funding, they're able to invest this money into state-of-the-art research facilities, which are used by students like yourselves when they're studying. And finally, better employability and salary. So this might seem like ages away, but it is something to take into account when you're looking at universities. So 10 of the top 20 universities in the UK having the highest numbers of students in graduate employment are from Russell Group universities, and the same 10 are within the top 50 across the world. So do have a look at the kind of career support that you'll be offered at a university, whether if it's a graduate job or whether it's finding a part-time job alongside your degree, and whether it's work placements over the summer or for a full year in industry. So just to conclude, in this presentation, you've been introduced to what a competitive university is, maybe gained an understanding of what the benefits of applying to a competitive university are, and also developed an understanding of what the Russell Group is. So I'm just going to leave this final slide up. I'm going to ask my colleague Carl to compare some questions that have come through on the chat. So please do, if you have any questions at all about what has gone on in the presentation, or any general questions about applying to university, please do ask away. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So if you do have any questions, please do type them in the chat function. They aren't publicly viewable, so they'll come straight to me, so don't worry about anybody else seeing those questions. But please do type them on that chat so that we can get them through on Zoom.
We have well, I definitely have a saying when I go into schools or colleges, which is no question is too silly. I think if you have a question, or if you're thinking about something, or if this presentation made you think of anything, then it's very likely that someone else is probably thinking the same thing. So, yeah.
So, Amy, we have a questions just come in, which is about, do universities consider GCSE results?
Really good question. So universities will publish their entry requirements on the website. So, for example, University of Exeter, if you go on and you have a look at a history degree, for example, it will list what entry requirements there are for that course. Some courses do require GCSE English or GCSE Maths, and if that, or another GCSE, if that is applicable, then it will be really clear on the entry requirements for a course, and also on UCAS as well. So if you are looking at courses through UCAS, then it will clearly say whether GCSEs are relevant.
That's great. Our next question is about lockdown. How will lockdown affect applications?
That is a really good question. I think that at the moment, people are still applying to university. Universities are making offers, and they are making them as quickly as they can. So the whole UCAS structure is exactly the same as it has been. We have a centralised admissions team at Exeter. So we have a huge admissions team who've been working remotely since March, who are continuing to kind of process applications and look at everything. So we have a big centralised team, so a big team that looks at every application for every subject. So I don't know if Carl wants to add anything onto this, but in terms of applications and offer making, lockdown hasn't really impacted that for the University of Exeter. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Carl.
No, just to say that the process remains the same. So in terms of deadlines, they'll remain as they've always been. 15th of October was the deadline for medicine, dentistry, veterinary science, and Oxbridge, and then you've got the 15th of January as the next important deadline for you. The only change will be obviously that exams will be pushed back a little bit in the summer, so the period between you doing your exams and then us getting the results and then getting them out to you in terms of places will be slightly different to what has happened in previous years. So that's the main implication that we have seen so far in relation to COVID and lockdown itself. Amy, we have a question here on how long does a personal statement have to be? Is there no ideal length?
Oh, okay. So there is a word limit. I can't remember it off the top of my head, my colleague Carl might, but there is a very specific character limit. So what we would advise is when you're looking at your personal statement, when you're drafting it, do draft it on a Word document or a separate document. Don't draft it within the UCAS, on the UCAS website. Do draft it on a different document, because then you can keep to your word count and your character count. So there is a specific word limit. So do kind of play around, maybe draft it. Your first draft might be really, really, really long. So, and that's fine. We do view it a bit like an academic essay when we're working with students on planning theirs. So kind of planning it out, drafting it, redrafting it, getting people to look at it, but it does have a word limit, so really important. Carl, do you know that off the top of your head?
It's one side of A4. So when you type in, it's one side of A4. There's a character limit that you have. So you can't go beyond that. The actual software won't allow you to type more than that.
So yeah, really important to kind of draft it on a separate document, keep to that character limit, and then move it across into UCAS when you're ready to submit.
It is 4,000 characters, the exact amount, but yes. The next question we have here is in relation to applying, and it's how does it matter how close to the deadline you submit your application?
So what we would always say is kind of, do take time to consider your UCAS application before you put it in. Don't leave it until kind of the day before. It is kind of important to get it in as soon as possible, so that universities have sort of time to kind of have a look at your application. So do get it in before the 15th of January, but to kind of give yourself some time to think about it properly before you submit, and taking some time to actually put together the application itself. So what I was saying about drafting and redrafting your personal statement, it maybe shouldn't be something that you just do in an hour. So do kind of draft it, maybe have a bit of distance from it as well, like a day or 2 days, and then come back to it and have a look at it again. So taking some time to consider what you're putting in, because obviously that's what the university is going to see when they're assessing your application, but also don't leave it till the last minute. Carla, if you've got any extra advice on timelines, but that's what I would say.
Every university has a commitment that we will make equal consideration to all applications that come in by the 15th of January. So whether it comes in now or next week, it shouldn't, the places don't run out as a result. But certainly our advice would be, as soon as you're ready, submit that application so that universities have a chance to digest it and really go through them. Amy, another question, is there a limit to how many universities you can apply for?
So you get 5 UCAS choices on your UCAS form. So you could apply for 5 courses at one university, or you could apply for 5 different courses at 5 different universities. So there is a limit of 5 max universities you can apply to on your UCAS form.
Fantastic. A question on deferring and gap years. If someone wants to defer and take a gap year, how should they apply? Do they need to apply now for 2021 or wait?
So you can do either. So if you do make an application now, you can make an application for deferred entry. What you can do is you can make reference to that in your personal statement as well. So you can say, you're planning to do something in particular, maybe to do with your course. If you're taking the year to kind of do work experience or maybe learn a language or something, then you can make reference to that in your personal statement. So you can apply for deferred entry. What we would do is, if you are doing this, just make it really, really clear to the admissions team and confirm that you are applying for deferred entry, or you can apply in the next cycle as well. So it is up to you. Carla, I don't know if you wanted to, again, add anything to that.
The only bit to add is that obviously if you apply now, you've got the support of your school or college, whereas if you apply next year, you won't be part of that establishment, so you'll have less support available. Our advice is, generally speaking, if you can apply now and then defer, provide the university with an explanation of what you intend to do for that year, how it's relevant to your course of study and what it is you want to do, and that should be absolutely fine. Our next question, Amy, is about EPQ and the relevance of it on offer making process.
So universities, so obviously I'm going to be speaking from the University of Exeter's point of view, but we do really value the experience and the knowledge that taking EPQ does have on a student. For the EPQ at Exeter, if you are taking a particular course and you have done your EPQ and you've got an A in your EPQ at A level, then we can in some cases make you a reduced offer. So to take the example of history, for history we ask for 3 A's. If you are made an AAA offer, you get those 3 A's and you get an A in your EPQ as well. That AAA could go down to AAB. That isn't for all courses. It's for all what's called uncapped courses. But if you are thinking about applying to the University of Exeter, we do take the EPQ into account, and in some cases it can mean you get a reduced offer. It's also really good. Sorry, it's also really good to put into your personal statement, as I made reference to. So particularly if the project is kind of relevant to the subject you are applying for. Either way, it gives you great research skills that you can make reference to in your personal statement.
That's brilliant. We've got a COVID question now. So will term start later in 2021 due to delayed exams?
So the university will make it really clear about term dates, and what we do is, if you are made an offer, if you are a University of Exeter offer holder, and if you made us your firm choice or your insurance choice, we're going to be communicating all along the way. So you will receive kind of constant updates from the university, and you'll be kept informed. Carl, I don't know if you know about the published term dates for next year, but what I would say is kind of we will keep all students and offer holders really updated.
So in terms of start dates, we were only told last week that exams would be coming, or results would be coming out later than normal. We're currently digesting what that means in terms of the application process, the turnaround, because obviously it's not just giving you a place, it's then also sorting out logistical arrangements like accommodation, if you need accommodation on site. So we will be looking at all those aspects and making sure that we're able to accommodate all those parts before we make a decision on when term starts. We have a question here on personal statements again, and it's asking, when we say 80% of the personal statement should be subject specific, is that all research, books you've read, or is it more about writing about your 3 A levels and what skills you've gained from those A levels themselves?
Okay, that's a really good question. So when I say sort of relevant to the subject, that can be a huge range of things. So it could be the things you've made reference to, so the fact you maybe studied history at A level, you absolutely loved it, it made you do some kind of reading around the course, it inspired you to do your EPQ on a particular decade or something like that. But it can also be to do with why you're motivated and why you're inspired to take that subject. So if you read something in particular that really sparked your interest, or you've had a look at the modules that are being offered on a course at the university that you're applying to. So that 70 to 80% can be anything sort of relating to your subject. If you're applying for a joint honours or a combined course, so for example, we offer a liberal arts course at Exeter, you could make reference to all the different subjects you could be studying together as well, and how your current, maybe your current package of A levels has inspired you to take this particular course, because it allows you to sort of carry on lots of different things you're interested in doing. But that's kind of why I said about sort of drafting and redrafting as well, because you might kind of write your personal statement, write that 70 to 80%, and then sort of give it to a friend or a teacher or a parent or guardian, and they might say, oh, you know, you're really good at this part of this subject, or I know you wrote an essay on that, why don't you put that in? So it's really good having like extra pairs of eyes on your personal statement as well, because they might be able to sort of give you some advice on how you can really sort of directly link it to the subject you're applying to.
Fantastic. We've got some questions coming in quite specific about courses at different universities.
Okay.
What I would suggest you do is save those questions for the sessions later on, which are applying to either Exeter, Cardiff or Bath, and you'll have opportunities there to be able to ask specific questions of the particular institutions later on. We have a question here about, what if you haven't picked all the right A levels for the course that you want to do?
Yep. So as I mentioned earlier, you'll have a set entry requirements, so grades to allow you to get onto that course. What I would say is just look very carefully at the subject requirements. So if a subject is required, then it will be listed. Some courses, it might quite surprise you that you don't actually need those subjects in order to take that degree. So I'll give you an example of law at Exeter. We ask for 3 A's, but we don't mind what subject combination that is. So do your research into if a subject is definitely required for a course. And I would say just kind of keep in touch with the universities. Like Carl said about going to applying to Exeter or Bath or Cardiff, those are sort of drop-in sessions, and you can go to lots of virtual fairs as well and talk to the university and see what the subject combinations are for a particular course. So I hope that helps. I don't know if you wanted to add anything onto that, Carl.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
We have a question here on, what does uncapped mean, and is architecture considered an uncapped course?
Good question again. So a capped course means there's a limited number of spaces on that course. So that could be perhaps that, say medicine tends to be capped. There's the government kind of limits the number of students who can take medicine on a course. Some universities will have caps on their courses because they offer study abroad or a particular placement, for example. Universities can, if you ask about this, they'll be able to let you know. Architecture, we don't offer architecture at the University of Exeter, but that may be a good question to kind of ask Bath in the applying to Bath session this afternoon, and if they don't know on the spot, then they will know the right person to ask. And as well, if you are considering architecture, whether it's at Bath or somewhere else, do just get in touch with the university. You can just email them and ask, or again, go to one of these virtual fairs and ask them on the spot, because they'll be able to provide you with some information. But in short, capped means there's kind of a limited number of spaces on the course.
Fantastic. Question here on the Welsh back, and I don't know whether you'll want me to answer this or not, but would the Welsh back affect entrance grades in any way?
So I'm going to pass that back to my colleague Carl, who is our expert on Wales.
Okay, so it very much depends on the university you apply to and whether the Welsh back is considered a qualification that's regarded for a contextual offer or not, in the same way as we do the EPQ. So some universities will, some universities won't. You need to very much look at the particular sort of universities. Some universities will treat it alongside A levels, for example. So you could have a Welsh back combination with some A levels as well, and do it that way. So you'd really need to look very carefully at the entry grades or equivalencies that universities have on the websites to check to see how the Welsh back is treated. The next question, on the modern languages courses, is it compulsory to do the year abroad, or are there other options?
So this would be on a university by university basis. At the University of Exeter, we do have a study abroad built into our modern languages degree. But again, you could take different combinations. So you could take something like liberal arts, which would allow you to pick up modern languages alongside some other subjects as well. But in terms of whether it is compulsory or the course structure, it does differ from university to university, and it can differ like on a case by case basis as well. So I would just kind of get in touch with the university you're interested in, whether it's one of the three universities this afternoon or another one, just to kind of confirm. But again, it's going to be on the university website. So if you go on a particular subject on the university website, it typically does show you the course structure, so what you can expect from each year, also with some example modules as well. Unfortunately, that might have to be our last question for the moment, as we're at the end of the session. But what I would say is do come and chat to us later. So it'll be kind of a drop in, drop out format in applying to Exeter, Bath and Cardiff. And my colleagues and myself will be there to kind of help with any other sort of specific questions you have about courses and things like that.
Fantastic. So we'll bring this session to a close. Please go back to the landing page and select your next link for your next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye. Bye.